Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. This public hearing is now open. This event is being recorded and will be posted for public review. My name is Heather Carter. I am the Regional Supervisor for the Division of Air Quality, Fayetteville Regional Office. I have been appointed to be the hearing officer for this public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive your comments for consideration in the issuance of an air quality permit to Duke Energy's Carolina LLC Marshall Steam Station. Duke Energy is seeking to retire 2 coal-fired boilers at the plant and to replace them with 2 new natural gas-fired simple cycle turbines capable of firing number 2 fuel oil as a backup. The facility is also seeking to install a natural gas-fired auxiliary boiler, 2 natural gas-fired heaters, a diesel-fired emergency generator, a diesel-fired emergency fire pump, and 2 diesel fuel storage tanks as new supporting equipment for the turbines. This project is part of Duke Energy's carbon plan submitted to the North Carolina Utilities Commission to comply with the carbon dioxide emissions reductions required by Session Law 2021-165, House Bill 951. The address for the site is 8320 East North Carolina Highway 150, Terrell, Catawba County, North Carolina 28682. All forms of comments will be received, and all will have equal consideration in the final decision on whether to issue the permit. The Director of the Division of Air Quality, Mr. Mike Abrazinskis, has decided to conduct this public hearing as part of the comment period to receive your comments. The public hearing announcement was published in the Hickory Daily Record on October 17, 2024, the Mooresville Tribune on October 22, 2024, and on the Division of Air Quality's website on October 17, 2024. During this public hearing, we will be receiving oral comments from those individuals who registered to speak at this event. If you have not registered to speak but wish to provide oral comments, please return to the registration table in the lobby to sign up. Joining me for this hearing tonight are representatives from the Division of Air Quality's Raleigh Central Office and Mooresville Regional Office. From the Raleigh Central Office, Sean Taylor, Division of Air Quality's Public Information Officer, Mark Swilla, the Title V Permitting Section Chief, Joe Volker, Engineering Supervisor in the Title V Permitting Section. From the Mooresville Regional Office, Melinda Willannon, Regional Supervisor, Seth Hall, Timekeeper for tonight's hearing, Denise Hayes, assisting as note taker, and other Mooresville Regional Office staff, including Mary Allen, Monica Coley, and Brian Huang. I would like to thank any local, city, or county officials who may have joined us tonight. We appreciate your interest in the application and draft permit. The comment period for this draft permit opened on October 17, 2024, and will close on Friday, November 22, 2024, at 5 p.m. In addition to your oral comments tonight, the Division is also accepting comments via email to daq.publiccomments@deq.nc.gov with the subject line DukeMarshall.24A, and by phone to a voicemail box at 919-707-8726. Also, if you have written comments that you wish to submit, we have a box available near the microphone. All forms of comments will be received, and all will have equal consideration in the final decision on whether to issue the permit. Copies of the permit application, the draft permit, and the draft permit review, and other information concerning the permit application are available to the public at the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, Mooresville Regional Office, located at 610 East Center Avenue, Suite 301, Mooresville, North Carolina. And the Division of Air Quality Central Office, Air Permitting Section, located at 217 West Jones Street, Suite 4000 in Raleigh, North Carolina. These materials are available during normal business hours at these locations. Please call in advance to make an appointment. A copy of the draft air permit and draft permit review are also available on the Division of Air Quality's website at ncair.org. That's ncair.org in the section titled Public Notices. The order of events for this hearing is as follows. First, Joe Volker, Engineering Supervisor, will discuss the application and the draft air quality permit. This will be followed by the public comment period. Only those individuals who have registered to speak will be called on to present oral comments. To hear as many speakers as possible, oral statements will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. We want to provide as much time as possible for all speakers to be heard. This public hearing is scheduled to adjourn no later than 8 p.m. tonight. We will call the names of each registered speaker in order of your registration. The first speaker will be called. We will also announce the name of the next speaker in the queue so that they can prepare to provide comments. Please proceed to the microphone when your name is called, and your time will start when you begin speaking. We will keep track of your time and will announce when your 3 minutes have expired. Please respect the time of all who wish to present oral comments tonight by adhering to the time limits and closing your remarks as quickly as possible once time is up. Cross-examination of the person presenting comments or me, the hearing officer, will not be allowed. However, as the hearing officer, I may ask questions to the speaker for clarification. Questions directed to the Division of Air Quality staff members will not be answered during this hearing. If you have questions for DAQ staff, we can provide you with our contact information so that you may contact us during normal business hours. We ask that when recognized speakers are presenting their comments, the audience refrain from making noise, including applauding or talking over speakers or making any other noise that could impact the integrity of the audio recording of tonight's hearing. This ensures that I can hear all public comments clearly, that all public comments can be captured as part of the official record, and that all speakers are treated with respect when it is their turn to speak. After receiving comments this evening, the public hearing will be closed. However, the period for submitting comments does not close until Friday, November 22nd, 2024 at 5 p.m. Again, all forms of comments will be received, and all will have equal consideration in the final decision on whether to issue the permit. I will now call on Joe Volker to discuss the application and the draft air quality permit.
Thank you, Heather. Good evening. My name is Joe Volker, and I'm an engineering supervisor in the permitting section for the North Carolina Division of Air Quality. I'm here on behalf of Ed Martin, who was the permit engineer for this application and has retired from the division. Duke Energy Carolinas, or simply Duke Energy, operates the Marshall Steam Station located in Catawba County. This facility currently generates electricity with 4 coal-fired boilers. As part of its carbon plan, Duke Energy is seeking to retire 2 of these boilers and replace them with 2 new natural gas-fired simple cycle combustion turbines. These turbines will be capable of firing number 2 fuel oil as a backup fuel. In addition, Duke Energy plans to construct new supporting equipment for the turbines, including 1 natural gas-fired auxiliary boiler, 2 natural gas-fired dew point heaters, 1 emergency diesel fuel-fired generator, 1 emergency diesel fuel-fired fire water pump engine, and 2 diesel fuel storage tanks. Emissions from each of the new turbines will be controlled with dry, low nitrogen oxides combustors, selective catalytic reduction technology, and an oxidation catalyst. Should the turbines combust fuel oil, their turbines will also use water injection systems. The project is expected to result in significant reductions in air emissions, particularly nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, sulfuric acid, and carbon monoxide. The Marshall Steam Station is a major stationary source under Prevention of Significant Deterioration rules, abbreviated PSD. Duke Energy has proposed emission limits such that this project does not constitute a major modification under PSD. The new turbines will be subject to federal regulations, including the National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, abbreviated NESHAP, Subpart 4Y, and New Source Performance Standards, abbreviated as NSPS, Subparts 4K and 4TA. The auxiliary boiler will be subject to NESHAP Subpart 5D and NSPS Subpart DB. The two natural gas-fired dew point heaters will be subject to NESHAP Subpart 5D and NSPS Subpart DC. And finally, the emergency generator and fire water pump engine will be subject to NESHAP Subpart 4Z and NSPS Subpart 4I. Duke Energy will operate continuous emission monitoring systems for nitrogen oxides and carbon monoxide from the turbines. Duke Energy will conduct emissions testing for other pollutants from the turbines. In addition, Duke Energy will be required to comply with state regulations as codified in the North Carolina Administrative Code. Duke Energy evaluated potential emissions of toxic air pollutants from the facility. As a conservative approach, they modeled emissions from the combination of all turbines and coal-fired boilers. This modeling demonstrated that each pollutant was less than 26% of the respective acceptable ambient level at any time during or after the project transition. This modeling was approved by the Division of Air Quality's Analysis Branch on August 8, 2024. The draft permit includes conditions that ensure ambient levels of all pollutants beyond the facility's fence line comply with federal and state emission standards, including applicable health-based standards. The facility will be subject to record-keeping and reporting requirements and regular inspections. In addition, the draft permit contains a condition that requires the two coal-fired boilers to be shut down after commercial operation of the new combustion turbines has occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. At this time, we will hear from those who registered to provide oral comments this evening. When your name is called, please proceed to the microphone. To ensure our records are complete, please clearly state your name and who you are representing. Your comments will be recorded, so speak clearly toward the microphone. I will do my best to pronounce your names correctly, and I do apologize in advance for any errors. We will begin taking your comments. The first commenter will be Brittany Griffin, followed by Sheena Ramasco,
Sorry. Okay. Good evening. My name is Brittany Griffin. I am the Advocacy Manager with Clean Air NC. We are based in Charlotte, but we're a statewide organization addressing air pollution and climate change. So, we kindly ask DEQ to deny Duke Energy's requested air permit for the Marshall plant, or require substantial modifications that meaningfully address our concerns, and all the concerns you'll probably hear this evening and as comments are submitted to the docket. First, Duke Energy or any other power plant should not be held to a lesser standard when it comes to permitting requirements and pollution controls. While we commend DEQ for including a permit condition requiring units 1 and 2 to be shut down after the new gas plant is operational, that condition needs to include an enforceable backstop date so that Duke cannot continue operating the coal units longer than expected or planned. Our second issue is that the draft permit poses serious health risk and well-being of local communities. Exposure to the plant's increased VOCs and lead has adverse health impacts. So for example, these pollutants, these dangerous pollutants will impact the reproductive, cardiovascular, and nervous systems. Children will also be at a higher risk for neurological damage, which can lead to behavioral problems and learning deficiencies. Finally, the draft permit fails to include adequate monitoring required for these dangerous pollutants. In closing, we respectfully ask that DEQ deny the permit application, or at the very least, establish an enforceable timeline to retire the coal units and include a more robust conditions for air monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Thank you, Ms. Hall. Ms. Griffin, I'm sorry. Sheena Ramasco, followed by Tanya Hall.
Hello. I'm sorry, it's very loud. So my major concern is that when I was going over the paperwork, there was a predictive model that was being used to kind of figure out what the emission levels were going to look like in the future based off of data that was provided by, I think, EPA, DEQ, and Duke. And in that predictive model,
You have to come closer.
come closer. Okay. In that model, it was showing that emission levels were higher than EPA thresholds. I found that interesting that that was being included, that this discussion was happening, even with that data. And there's also a gas turbine that was put into effect in Crystal River, Florida, that is a very similar template to what we're looking to do, or what Duke is looking to propose off of Island Point Road. And the levels that they have demonstrated are well beyond the thresholds as well. So I'm still wondering why we're entertaining this proposed project when the predictive model and the actual template of the model in real life is showing that thresholds are above EPA standards. I also wanted to mention that our neighborhood sits within a quarter mile of this proposed location. Our neighborhood was not included in the initial discussions from Duke. Our neighborhood has roughly 350 homes, and we were excluded from the initial conversation. And when a representative from our community reached out to Duke, they said that I'm so sorry, we forgot about you guys. We can come and talk to you. And they did come and speak to us, and we weren't able to answer a lot of the questions, mostly pertaining to air pollution. So we're wondering where all that factual data is coming from, because it seems like the only factual data that they've been able to present is either data from the 70s or data that they were able to self-provide. And then in addition to that, we'd also like to know what kind of remediation efforts that they will be held to, what kind of standards they should be held to, because at this point in time, they've only been able to self-remediate, and it doesn't seem like they've been held accountable for any of these threshold exceeded levels.
Thank you.
Okay.
And can you state your name and who you're representing as well?
It's Sheena Moscow, and I'm a neighbor in Northview Harbor.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so next we have Tanya Hall, followed by Thomas Getz.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Tanya Hall, and I also am a Northview Harbor resident. I think I'm going to echo some of the communication that Sheena Ramasco just provided. I was actually the neighbor that found the permit had been applied for, and our community was not notified. Just so that we kind of give some information of where Northview Harbor sits, it is off Island Point Road, which is the back half of where the steam station is. And our community entrance on Capes Cove Drive is directly across from where they're planning to have the 200 to 400 trucks every single day in their main entrance for the turbine plants. We have, as Sheena mentioned, 350 homes in our community. We have been subjected long enough to the lack of oversight that the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality has actually provided for Duke maintaining any level of consistency in meeting standards. So in their current facility, as Sheena had mentioned and others have mentioned, it has been going on for 30 years that they have been unable to meet standards. They have had contaminated wells across their property. They continue to be deceptive when it comes to stating that there are no studies linking any coal ash to cancers, which is not accurate. There's numerous ones across the world, including in the United States. The EPA, as you know, in 2015-16, several years ago, almost a decade now, has identified, even if they weren't held to standards earlier and they weren't really known, that they are toxic. They have not met their standards. They are not closing sooner than everybody thinks. So they had the 2034, which was moved up to 2029 because they weren't meeting standards. And now in April of this year, they filed for an extension, letting you guys know that they're not going to be closing on time. And there's been no information public since then. I'd like to just state that they also, when they developed our community, because it was Duke Energy was our community prior was owned by Duke, they stated in our CC&Rs on page 1 that they would never cause a nuisance to our properties and our community. And it's on page 1 of our CC&Rs, so there would be 350 plus customers that you would have at Duke and lawsuits that would be filed on behalf of this being a nuisance directly across from our community.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Thank you.
Thomas Getz.
My name is Thomas Getz. I'm a resident of Charlotte, North Carolina. I am representing myself. I am retired from a career in water pollution control. I have a master's degree in environmental science. And I would like the department to know that over 50 years ago as a college student, I wrote a term paper on the effect of air pollution on the climate. Everything that is happening today was known 50 years ago. As a 20-year-old college student, I was not concerned because it was 100 or 200 years in the future. But I've been following the story, the science of climate since that time. Every time new information becomes available, it is accelerated, it is worse, it is more pronounced, it is happening sooner and much worse than was foreseen 50 years ago. This trend has been continuing for 50 years, and the department and the state agencies should not approve any permits of any type whatsoever that emit additional fossil fuels into the atmosphere. The Duke Energy Company should have a dozen projects shovel-ready of a non-fossil fuel emitting energy generation. There's a number of alternatives. There is solar, there is tidal, there is geothermal, there is biomass, there is nuclear, there are other things. There should be no additional fossil fuels. It is an emergency that affects our future generations, and I expect every state employee and agency with jurisdiction to oppose the approval of this permit and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getz. Those are all the names that I have for those registered to speak at this time. If you are here this evening and wish to provide oral comments, please make your way to the front at this time, complete one of our forms, and then make your oral comments. Thank you, Mr. Jim Martin.
Good evening. My name is Jim Martin. I'm a 25-year resident of Charles Ford, and I've got more than 20 years as an environmental health and safety manager in general industry. Part of that time was the responsible individual for a Title V air permit. So I understand what the department's doing, what Duke Energy's trying to do, and I'm in support of this permit. I think it's a good thing that we're retiring coal-fired and replacing them with something that's slightly less dangerous to the environment. Coal fire is, it's got its hazards, but natural gas is less hazardous. I also spent 5 years working for a company developing energy storage units. So, I understand the need for renewables. I support that, but they're not perfect either, and there's limitations to renewable energies. So I think as an interim measure, this is a good step to bridge that gap between coal fire and renewables. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. All right, if you did not speak tonight, but still want to provide comments on the draft air quality permit for the Duke Energy Carolinas LLC Marshall Steam Station, remember there are several ways to provide comments until the end of the comment period on Friday, November 22nd, 2024 at 5 p.m. You may call 919-707-8726 and leave a voice message with your first and last name, whom you are representing, and state your comments related to the Duke Energy Marshall plant. You can provide written comments via email to daq.public.comments@deq.nc.gov with Duke Marshall.24A in the subject line. You can use postal mail to submit written comments to the address listed in the public notice. Mailed comments must be postmarked by Friday, November 22nd, 2024. You may also submit written comments tonight in the box placed near the microphone. Based on the information received during tonight's public hearing and comments received throughout the comment period, I will make a recommendation to the Director of the Division of Air Quality for his consideration in making a final decision on the draft air quality permit for Duke Energy Carolinas LLC Marshall Steam Station. Thank you all for your cooperation, attendance, and interest in the air quality permitting process. This public hearing is now adjourned.